How's everybody doing? Staxwell here with Team Perfect Curve, and today I'm going to be going over one of my personal favorite decks, Zoo. I'm going to explain why I think it's good in this format and whether or not you should run it in Conquest play and Ladder play. So, without further ado, I'm going to get right into my list and explain why I play every card so you can kind of make adjustments to your own deck based on my decisions. 2 Power Overwhelming. One of the better cards in the deck. It's a low-cost card that allows you to trade up very effectively, and also has amazing synergies with like Void Terror and things. And you could also like Sylvanas, summon Sylvanas, PO that to potentially take an Emperor. That's the most likely card I take, because like on 6 they drop Emperor, on 6 and then you're 7 Sylvanas, PO it, take Emperor, which can be a very strong play. And then not to mention PO allows your Death Rouse to trade up, which is also a very amazing versatile little thing that you got going on. Abusive Sergeant is kind of the same thing. Like, you want to just pump your Nibirian eggs and things like that to trade up. Like, the whole point of Zoo, it's just, if you look at the mana curve here, it's Zoo directly defined as just the best low cost cards in the game put into a deck, right? What better to do that with Warlock, where you just don't run out of card advantage, you just replenish your hand at will. So with the best low cost cards in the game, you can effectively put your opponent in a mana debt, right? So like, if you summon Flame Imp on a 1 and then they summon a 2-drop that's either a 3/2 or a 2/3, that's what 2-drops are, then your Flame Imp goes into it. You've effectively created a mana debt by using your 1 mana card for their 2 mana card. So that's what Zoo, directly is defined as. This one's a little bit more mid-rangey, and if you look, it's like only 3 5-drops, 1 6-drop, and 2 7 and a 9. So it's like, for the most part, it's still a very low curve deck. You just want to create like a little bit of a mid-range effect in it to keep up with some of the other decks. And Abusive definitely helps by creating these mana debts by using your smaller guards to trade up to their big cards while still establishing a body. 2/1 is the average stat for a 1-drop minion. That's the stat you want in a 1-drop minion, so just dropping him in its own is already value there. And if you could use that attack power to trade up to something, then it's definitely worth it. It's one of the better cards in the game, I feel. It's probably one of the best 1-drops. So it's definitely a strong inclusion in the deck. Flame Imp, I just went over the usage of this card, and the reason I only play 1 is because it's a good card, but not against certain matchups, and it's definitely not a card you want to draw late game, and it's a demon, so you don't want that to mess with your Void Caller. Like, it's good to apply a lot of pressure. You want to apply a lot of pressure to certain decks like Handlock, Druid, and that kind of thing, but like more slow decks, you want to apply pressure. But to like the aggro decks, you summon this, you're kind of doing their job for them. It doesn't have a super good defense. It's just only if you're playing the role as the beatdown will this card be good. So 1 is just fine in my opinion, and it's honestly it is the worst top deck in this deck in the late game when you're just trying to endure and outlast your opponent, and you're debating whether you want to tap. And if you tap into something like this, it's just like a headache. So just try and minimize that if you can. 2 Voidwalker is amazing on the opposite end of the spectrum because it's not so great versus control, but it is amazing versus aggro. Voidwalker is also pretty versatile in the perspective that it is a taunt, so if you want to protect something like your Knife Juggler or what have you, you can taunt it, and if you know your opponent has a weapon, you could just throw this out and kind of it'll be a taunt. Like against control, you want to save this more for like when they have a monster. Treat it more like just like a block like for an attack, right? Like just like a negate attack almost. Like, if they have a monster that you can't deal with, but you don't want to deal with your guys, you don't want him to effectively trade into you, you kind of just throw this down. 1 mana, not a big deal. Card advantage, again, not a big deal in this deck. You kind of just want to throw it down and block that attack, right? Haunted Creeper, another amazing card. It's a card you definitely want to use for trades with cards like PO and Abusive Sergeant. And Haunted Creeper also has the synergies with Knife Juggler. And Argusing a Creeper is also very good because Creeper is a card you never really want to trade into. It's a card you kind of just want to ignore, like just not deal with it, but yeah, it's definitely a very good card in the deck, and I would include it. Ironbeak Owl is a card that obviously I think is very good. There's a lot of decks that are just like build a minion decks. Like, I mean, I've seen that Priest deck floating around with the Inner Fire and all that, so you kind of want Owl against that. You want Owl against Sylvanas, you want Owl against taunts when you're going for lethal, because a lot of times like right when your opponent's trying to stabilize, they're a control deck and you're playing the beatdown, like you have a good board, they're going to place like a taunt or a Sludge Belcher or something, and you can likely owl it, get in there for a lot, like potentially game. Like Owl's a very good card, but 2 of, I'm not too sure about because it has a very weak body and the silence isn't good against every deck. So I think 1 Owl is just fine. Double Knife Juggler is a really good card. With your lower curve, it allows you to play a lot of monsters and in one turn, so Knife Juggler, really abuses that by having a strong body for a 2-drop. Again, 3/2 and 2/3 are the strong bodies for a 2-drop. So a strong body for a 2-drop with the ability to ping something every time you summon is amazing. Not to mention the synergies in this deck that it has with Haunted Creeper and Implosion. Nuberian Egg's also a very strong card in this deck. Combos with your Void Terror, like on 2 you Nuberian Egg, on 3 you Void Terror, that's insane. On 3 you have a 3/5 and a 4/4. Your opponent's lucky to get a 3/3 on a turn 3, so it's like if you do that, you're like so far ahead. If they don't have like a strong start and then you do that and then you just pass it back to them, I don't know really how they're going to answer that, and a lot of times it results in a good win. King Boss is a card that just farms the aggro decks. It farms them so well. Like the body is just insane and creates even more guys that you can use to also farm. Like against Face Hunter, this card is just great. Like you get the 1/1s that also are going to trade into guys. It's just an amazing card overall. But it does become somewhat of a liability past turn 8 against Patron. So you kind of want to debate a lot before summoning it. Maybe just wait till you can pair it with an Argus. So that way if you pair it with an Argus, then it's an amazing card because you have a 3/5, which means you're going to have to put 2 Patrons into it and they're going to kill them both. So it's like more of a threat when you just save it for a little bit. And again, if you drop it, it's a liability because they're literally going to fill their board with Patrons if they Warsong Patron you. So just think about it before you summon it against Patron, but everything else it's just amazing against. Void Terror, again, it's an amazing card. A lot of times you want to eat up a lot of your cards. Like it's really good at 2 right now because Patron's a big deck, and again, you make a lot of 1/1s in this deck between Implosion and King Boss, so you want to just eat up the 1/1s if you can with Void Terror, so that way they can't combo off of them, or you eat up your smaller guys in general, like you eat up your Void Walker, your Abusive Sergeant, that kind of thing, just so they can't multiply, or just so like you reduce the total amount of monsters on board so they can't Frothing and Warsong you. So it's like it just reduces your amount, like puts your small guys into a big guy, But yeah, it's a great card. Again, with Nuberian Egg, Haunted Creeper, it's just amazing. And again, you can do it with Sylvanas, so like that's really good too. Like you just like Sylvanas and then they like whatever. It's like you just Void Terror your Sylvanas after attacking with it, so you could like kill a guy, take a guy. Like there's just a lot of versatilities with Void Terror in a deck with so many death rails like this deck has. Implosion ×2. A lot of times, sometimes this card's role will depend the game, and that is very unfortunate because it is such a good card that you can't cut it, but for its RNG to affect the game in the way that it does, it is kind of unfortunate, but you kind of want to avoid situations where the RNG matters. I mean, sometimes it is unavoidable, but it is an undoubtedly good card that I don't think you can really cut. 2 Defender of Argus is an amazing card. It helps you combat Patron, helps you combat the aggro decks. I mean, this is where like your mid-range is starting to kick in, where you're playing like your bigger guys. So you can play like a control game versus like the smaller decks, like against like the Face Hunters and the Tempo Mages and all that. You can like, you don't have to like outrush them. You can like control them, like make their cards worthless by making your cards better. And you could taunt a lot of good cards. I mean, the possibilities are endless, right? You could taunt Creeper, Nuberian Egg, a big Void Terror, Sylvanas. There's just Void Caller. It's just a great card. And then Void Caller. Void Caller is an amazing card. It's almost like a better Shredder. The reason that this deck doesn't play Shredder is because it plays Void Caller. And while you're always replenishing your hand, the worst card you can get off of this is a 3/2 or a 1/3 with Taunt. And then both of those are pretty much better than the average Shredder card, I'd say. So, well, Flame Imp for sure. Is Void Walker? Maybe. But then, like, the better cards you get, like you get Mal'Ganis, Doomguard, like, those are insane cards to get. And then the Void Terror, if you get that, that's better than you're normally going to get off Shredder, so you really can't complain. And then health, the stats are pretty much the same. Like, it's just like the health and attack are switched. So, all in all, that's a great card. Definitely the reason that Zoo went more toward mid-range is because of this card. The tempo shifts that it creates is just insane. And a lot of times your opponent's just going to silence it just because they're afraid of what you can get. You can only silence so many things in this matchup, and there's a million things you want to silence. You want to silence every egg you see. You want to silence every Void Caller you see. You want to silence Sylvanas. There's times you definitely want to silence Mal'Ganis. And then you want to silence big Void Terrors. You want to silence King Boss. Like, there's so much you want to silence. Like, they can only silence so much. And, like, even if they do silence him, then you burn their silence, and you have a 4-drop, 3/4. Like, that's okay. You can't really complain too much on that. It's not like you're committing too much to his effect. Double Doom Guard gives you the burst that this deck really, I think needs, because like you're playing like the aggro, and then like sometimes like right when they're stabilizing, you know, you just seal it up like a Doomguard. So it's a really good card, obviously. Amazing stats. It's been in Zoo for as long as I've been playing Zoo, so it's a great card for sure. Like even in the strictly lower curve Zoos, it's in there. So it's an undeniably good card. 7 health is amazing. Like when they drop like something like Tharsian, and then you could just like drop this, hit it. So like it's an instant out to Tharsian, and establishes itself. And the 2 discard, like it sucks sometimes, and like that's okay because you know you have the life tap and everything, and like you kind of want to avoid situations where you have like double Doomguard and things. Like when you have double Doomguard or you have Doomguard Boom, it's very like debatable on what you want to do. But I think just make the play that will give you the most tempo, right? So if you have to discard Boom off of Doomguard, I think it's correct, because the whole point of this deck is just control the board, control the board, control the board. You just tempo, tempo, tempo. Your card advantage will come naturally with your hero power, and then they shouldn't be able to touch your life if you have a good board. So just by establishing the board and just maintaining tempo, you should be fine. And you should have the tempo right from the get-go of the game, because you have the lower curve deck. You have the lower curve deck, yeah, so you should have tempo right from the get-go. So just don't lose it, and then you will most likely win every game. The way that they win is they have like a good AoE or something, so you definitely want to play around that. And you can kind of read the AoE before it comes sometimes. Like they'll do weird things like hit your creeper for no reason, or hit your egg or something like that. So if you know they have the AoE, you want to taunt things that aren't Death Rattle. You want to taunt like your Knife Juggler and your Owl and your Imps and your Abusives and things like that, and then protect your eggs and your creepers. Because if you do that, then when they do AoE you, which might be the only way they possibly could win, then you will still have a board and you will still maintain your tempo. Because a lot of times when they AoE you, that's like a good majority of what their turn is going to be. And at the very worst, if you're protecting your egg, then they can't like say like True Silver hit your egg and then consecrate you, which like, or a quality consecrator or what have you, right? So it's like it just helps you protect yourself a little bit better. It's just more of an insurance to protect your things. And where were we? Lotheb. I'm a big fan of Lotheb. This format, like, it's really hard to combo with Patron under Lotheb. It's really hard to play Freeze Mage or play Rogue at all under Lotheb. And then like Druid combo can't do it with Lotheb. This deck's one weakness is AoE, right? I just said that. So what's the best card to combat AoE? Lotheb, right? Sylvanas, this is what gives it kind of like an edge over the more controlling matchups. Like you play a very aggressive early game, and if the game goes long enough, Sylvanas is a very big pain like for the control deck. I've been on the other end of it plenty of times, and it's just not a card you want to see because you probably burned your silences on eggs and things like that. So it's just a very strong card. So is Dr. Boom. I don't really need to go into too much detail about Dr. Boom. And then Mal'Ganis. Mal'Ganis is an insane card because, you know, all the demon synergy and everything, but it also plays a different role as well in some matchups, like in Freeze Mage and the alternate win condition decks. You want to like drop it when you feel like they're about to game you. So, you know, like against like Freeze Mage and things like that, you kind of want to like just tap, whatever, you know, just kind of like survive. Then you'll know when they're about to lethal you. They'll Alex you, or they'll play a secret and just fireball your face for no reason. So you know you're about to get lethaled. So you drop Mal'Ganis right there, and it kind of like, it's like, well, now you have to deal with Mal'Ganis and me. So it's like you just committed a fireball on your last turn, so your last turn was really weak to like lethaling me this turn, and now you have to deal with all this. Or you played Alex, which is again a card that's probably a little bit more weak because you should have a board against them. You should have some taunts or something. So yeah, Mal'Ganis is a really versatile card that can be very good in a lot of matchups, and it can just dictate some matchups. Like if you get Mal'Ganis off of Void Caller, sometimes that's just game right there, and the decks can't deal with it. Decks that don't play BGH and things like that. And then obviously Implosion into the next turn Mal'Ganis, or Implosion into slam your Void Caller to get Mal'Ganis. Like there's just all amazing plays across the board with Mal'Ganis. So a couple of matchups I kind of want to go into with this deck is one of them is going to be Handlock, because I'm only going to try and go into the weaker matchups. The matchups that you have a hard time with. And I feel like Handlock's one that a lot of players have trouble with, like Zoo versus Handlock, so I'm going to kind of go into detail with that real quick. You have a lot of cards that are really good against them. You want to play your 3/2s as quick as you can. You want to play your Flame Imps and your Knife Jugglers as quick as you can. And you kind of want to, again, protect your Death Rattles. And then against Handlock, you want to tap as much as they're tapping if you possibly can. If you can't play an aggressive card in the early game, tap. Don't just like waste it playing like a Void Walker and like, or just playing a Creeper. Like I think it's better just tap. Like just keep tapping, and then you're gonna have all these cards that you could actually play, and they'll play 1 minion per turn, And then you could kind of have like a lot of options. How do you want to deal with this card and everything? So just keep your hand big, keep your board big if you possibly can, but like just know that they're going to AoE you every chance they get. And if you kind of could tap into your bigger guys like Sylvanas, Boom, Mal'Ganis, Voidcaller, Doomguard, Argus, like that kind of thing, like you're going to wind up, you could wind up edging them out much easier than you normally would. But again, if you see the opportunity present itself for a very aggressive early game, like say you open Flame Imp, Knife Juggler, like that's insane. You gotta take that, and if you could follow it up with like a 3-drop like Imp King Boss, like yeah, sure, follow it up. Just try and get in there as much as you can, and then just keep tapping. So because they're always gonna establish themselves with a Giant and Taunt. Always is gonna happen, or a Sludge Belcher that'll clear your board or something. So it's very hard to cheese them out. Is all I'm saying. Just you kind of it's rare to like just get totally aggressive with them and kill them before they could play, but it is definitely possible. And if the hand presents itself, then do it. Another matchup that's pretty tough is Freeze Mage, and going over that, you can owl your silence guys when they're you can silence your guys when they are frozen to get in there for a game, so that's a big thing you want to kind of keep in mind. Loatheb is one that switches a favor, and Mal'Ganis is one that switches a favor. So you kind of have like 3 cards, and then I think Egg switches a favor by like they can't like Blizzard you as effectively and everything, so like you have certain cards in this deck that make it switch the favor of the game, so you want to tap into those. Like I know I didn't want to tap a lot at first because they're a burn deck and I don't want to like just do their job for them. But you got to remember, like they're probably gonna wind up Alex Strazing you anyway, so it's okay to tap yourself down to 20 or something, because it's really hard to do 20 in one turn. I'm not gonna say they can't. They can do as much as they want in one turn, but 20 in one turn is pretty hard. So just kind of keep that in mind. And you can like just, right when they're going for lethal, you just seal it up with like a Loatheb or a Mal'Ganis and you should be good. The Face Hunter matchup is also something that's pretty hard. You want a hard mull for your Voidwalker. Voidwalker's insane versus them. And because like they play like 2 1-drops, or yeah, if they play a 1-drop and you play that, then it's good. Or if they like you play that, they 1-drop, coin 1-drop, like something like that. It just wrecks their 1-drop, and they play what, 6 1-drops? 6 of them, I think. 2 Worgen, 2 Leper Gnome, 2 Abusive. Yeah, that's 6. So like it obliterates 6 cards in their deck, which is insane. Creeper again, same exact thing. It obliterates their 1-drops, and then you want to owl their Scientist. And yeah, it's like just watch out for Hounds is the only thing I'm gonna say. Like if you don't need to summon another guy, just set him up for lethal the next turn every turn. So like if you have him set up for lethal and you're debating like, oh, should I play like Imp King Boss? Like why would you play Imp King Boss? It's gonna give him another Hound. Like they're gonna do more damage. Like if you're out of range completely, sure. But if you're kind of on the edge, don't do it. Because if you have them set up for lethal anyway, then they're going to trade into your guys, which promotes you to win anyway, if they're trading into your guys. So those are pretty much the only bad matchups I could really think of for Zoo offhand. And it is one of the most, if not the most consistent deck in the game. So I always include it in my lineup for Conquest, always. It's just an insane deck. As far as consistency and matchups go, it doesn't have many bad matchups. And the matchups it does have are definitely winnable. So until next time, just remember, guys, that perfect is definitely not impossible.